Croissant and welcome to Tales for Wales, the pod that never fails to be that beautiful spark of New Year's warmth in an otherwise bleak, depressing as fuck January. That's right, we are your only path to mental well-being. Without us, you're fucked, you're gonzo, you're doolally tapped. So if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for your lovely hosts, which is of course me, and as ever, I'm joined by none other than my fellow Welsh kinsman, a brother that bleeds with me on the battlefield that is amateur history podcasting. Keep the gold, keep the myrrh, I'll just have the frankincense. It's me old pal Frankie.
No, that's good, Gia. You didn't say who you were.
Over that one.
You didn't even
did
say
I not?
No,
Shit.
You just said it's me.
A measly 9 out of 10 on the scoreboard. So well.
Yeah, it was very good, bar that little hiccup. So yeah, apologies for calling you out on that like a right little tit. Hey, hang
couldn't
on.
let me enjoy myself, could you?
Listen to this.
2 seconds. Oh, you dirty Bertie. Is that? Don't tell me that's like a fucking Pepsi Max, is it?
It is a.
Oh,
hang on, no. It's a. No, I wasn't saying it is.
I'm
just teasing you a second.
Oh.
How do I frame this now? Sorry, can you hear drilling in the background?
Drilling? No,
Yeah,
I'm drilling, mate.
Em's my partner's putting up a wardrobe without me.
You've gone. Yeah. Crack on, love. I'm just gonna crack open a Carlin with my mate on a podcast.
Well, no, it's not a Carlin because I'm doing dry January, as you well know, and because I'm getting married this year, so I've taken up like anything I do. I go to like quite the extremes quite quickly. Like I'm quite I'm an all-in kind of guy. So I've done 2 5Ks in 3 days, and I hadn't done a 5K in 6 years. So yeah, I'm not a jogger by any means, but so I've done 2 back to back, and I had no booze so far. But I thought, this is the real test. What are we 9 days into January? And I thought
the real test. This is what they call the wall in the running world.
Well, the real test is me and you doing a pod without any alcohol. So I thought, I didn't want to have those alcoholic-free beers because I thought, well, the point of me doing this is to not gain weight, and they're probably calorific. But I've gone for an Erdinger alcohol-free because they spell it in like German, so it's ALKOHOLFREI. Alcohol-free.
And then he did something I would never do.
And then Timothy Treadwell, he did something I would never do. He smoked with the bears. we got to
put that clip. Yeah, definitely. For those who don't know, just think we're fucking mad. They're just going, why have they done the German accent all of a sudden? Yeah.
Oh, then Timothy Treadwell, he did something I would never do.
And Alan Franks did something I would never do. Have an Erdinger alcohol-free.
Alcohol-free Erdinger. So that's the first time I've never had alcohol-free beer in my life. So I just poured that now. I don't know why I'm saying it like I'm a YouTube reviewer, but I'm going to test it now live on pod.
Yeah. Go on. What's your verdict?
Well, you know me. I like my lager to taste like fuck all, and I want it to be like piss. I want it to be pretty much see-through, like Carlin, Stella, size. Probably a bit more tasty, but you know me, I like my bog standard shit lagers. This year is on the edge of being a bit hibiscusy. Fennel.
Not a hibiscus boy.
You know what I mean? It's like an IPA.
Yeah.
But it tastes like beer. That's actually not too bad.
And the point is to trick your brain. So, I mean, in that respect, good going, I guess.
Well, I have heard, so I spoke to a few friends who've done Dry January before. They've all recommended this is the best alcohol-free one. But what's so funny about it is it brands itself as isotonic and containing vitamins. So they give it out at the end of the marathon. They sponsor part of the marathon.
Oh, Jesus.
Imagine finishing 26 miles, giving you a pint. It's like frothy, creeping. But also, I've got it ice cold, so that's helping. But I've got another one to try in a bit. So I'll give you another review. That is actually very good. I've had a second sip, and that is
for something that can't get you pissed. You're giving it the thumbs up. That must be high. That must be decent. Must be half decent. Yeah, for the listeners, I for one am not doing dry January. I am
You're not a quitter, are you?
I'm not a quitter. I never quit. I'm on my 4th. I think I was only on the Budweiser. Is that German?
No. It's American, but German roots, I imagine.
German roots.
Budweiser. Yeah, I just wanted another glass of Budweiser.
And then I put the Budweiser in the fridge, and
Don't make me
so
shut. I'm
I'm
full of chocolate.
so yeah, I'm on the Budweiser. So where Franks is leaving the cause, leaving the good fight. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm fighting twice as hard, so it's fine.
Well, so my diet plan for the wedding is no alcohol at all this month and running every other day. I've signed up for a 10K next month, and I'm not a runner. Like I play
Jesus.
football, but I'm just not a runner. So I know anyway because apparently running is good for you. You know, it's good for you for losing weight in terms of getting your steps in. So next month I'm back on the alcohol, but I'm off the beers. And I'm not changing my diet because you can't change my diet. So I'm just going to be like, well, fuck that.
Look,
I'll get rid of the beers.
I've tried. It ain't happening.
But getting rid of the beers is probably saving me like 4,000 calories a week. So that's got to do something. It's got to.
Oh yeah, I did consider dropping the beers and just doing spirits myself, but then because I'm going to Dublin this weekend, I know for a fact I'm going to guzzle beers when I'm there. So I was like, what's the point doing like 15 days, 12 days of it? I mean, that probably would help quite a bit. But
well, I did last weekend.
Why do it half-assed?
I was trying on some wedding suits, and the idea was I was going to go with with like Craig and my mate Geth to have beers afterwards. But I was like, it's the first weekend of Dry Jan. I can't just like fuck it off instantly. So I didn't have any. Because if I had like one, I might as well go for all out for it.
Well,
but anyway,
exactly.
Next month I'm doing back off the beers still, so staying off the beers, but back on the shorts, so like rum and coke and stuff. And then the month after that, I'm gonna come back to beers and maybe have a couple, but not loads, and mostly stay on the shorts. But I'm giving up crisps, so every month I'm depriving myself of something, and hopefully overall,
just for the rest of your life, you're just going to deprive yourself of one thing every month until you know what works, until you can find a working result.
Well, normally I'd have all these elements. I'd have crisps, I'd have shorts, I'd have beers, and removing one a month. That's surely got to do something. Surely.
Yeah, like I said too, you can't cut something out that you love and not get some sort of benefit. If that's the case, then what's the fucking point in it? Yeah, what's the point?
So yeah, that's my plan. So if you want to follow Frankie's diet, you can sign up to my regime. It's called Idiots.
We've got a new podcast coming out next week. It's called Frankie's Diet in Tips, and we just all we do is talk about giving up crisps next month, and then the booze, and then cakes, and then all sorts.
I wanted to make a restaurant called, and it would be like really bad for you, like heart stop style burgers and like smoked ribs, and it'd be a very deep southern vibe to it. Food wise, not politically, but it would be like, you'd have like a lot of like because I loved Louisiana, like Memphis and Tennessee, and when I traveled to America, I absolutely loved the Deep South. Again, food wise, not politically. And
did we bring out our Foghorn Leghorn classic?
Or how to the clay.
I'm quite the Southern Belle. I think you'll find.
Yeah. So, also, can you turn your camera off?
It is off, mate.
Cool. It says to me,
I've got on yours, a recording will continue once internet improves.
Mine says recording continues smoothly. Recording continues smoothly. Live video will return when the internet improves. But I think
I got that on yours, so I don't know what's going on there.
Mine says it's
playing
uploading
against each other. Mine's all right. Mine's going out.
We can keep this in. It's a look behind the curtain for
Yeah. It's not all smooth. It's not sunshines and rainbows, guys. Okay, sometimes things go wrong.
Yeah, you've got to learn to dance in the rain. So yeah, I wanted to make a restaurant now because I love cooking and I love like that kind of food that's really bad for you. But I'd call it Fat Al's Diner, and it would spell Fatal Diner because you might die there.
Ah, nice.
Don't know why I said that.
That's obviously been on your mind for a while. It's good to get it out sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, and I was going to say,
drain it.
Before the Christmas, I was like having a bit of an anxiety attack about my health. And like I remember I was saying like how much I was thinking, and I think I said it last week. Did I go over this last week about my heart?
Yeah, on the last one, I was gonna say don't be showing off now how fucking what prime health you're in. Thanks to
no, but did I say the big heart?
Yeah, you did because I made a great little jokette. If you recall.
Oh, you did, which I've stolen and told everyone that is my joke.
Oh, you bastard! I knew you would.
No, I gave credit. I sprinkled with credit when I told Emma.
Oh yeah,
she loved it, but But I did. In work, I stole that. I was giving it the old.
That's
I'm the
fair,
opposite of
mate.
the
We've all
Grinch.
done it.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
all done it.
But I
I
do
bet
like to
you.
spread it with credit when it's with people who know about it. So
This is what. Yeah, I was gonna say they'll go. Oh, I've listened. I found this really good podcast. It's called Tales from Roosevelt. Don't listen. Don't listen to that episode. All the
you
lies
cannot
unravel.
listen. Yeah. So what was I going to say? Oh, do you want to? Because it's a bit of a long. I always say this. It's a bit of a long episode tonight. So should we stop our rambling? And do
Yeah,
you want
should I
to?
give a little I'll give a little review slash comment slash fucking input.
And can we mention what we're going to mention? Because would it be live by the time this comes out? This episode comes out.
Well, this one's gonna come out now.
Probably
Is
the
that
20,
the
probably the third,
28th or the
28th or the
4th?
4th.
Will it be done by then?
Yeah, I reckon we'll be done by then.
The mystery, it's
Yeah.
palpable. I think you might be right. It might be done by then.
Well, should we just say that our plan
Go
is...
on then, just do it.
We're going to blow up into it. We've had a lot of people, a lot of you kind listeners have recommended for us to monetize this, to not only do the month, we have that pot people donate to help run another podcast. But instead of just doing that, doing an actual Patreon. So we think, hey, do you know what? We are going to do a Patreon. And we've already recorded a bunch. We recorded a couple. So when you sign up, maybe we shouldn't say it because we don't really know all the details.
I don't know. We can tease it, a little sizzle
Yeah,
reel.
it's a little sizzle reel. All right, here you go.
That's all it is.
Sizzle
It's not a fully formed idea yet. We're sort of blowing in the wind a little bit.
We've done some really funny episodes anyway, and we've done.
If we don't say so ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they were. I remember I laughed.
Seriously,
Yeah.
you want a sub because that's so funny.
Well, that first episode, I was too embarrassed to listen back to because I was so drunk.
Have you done it yet?
Jack done it. No, I haven't. I still not listened to it.
I was your canary.
I sent you down the mine to check.
Yeah,
it's because we make a massive faux pas towards the end that we fuck. It is,
and then.
What should I explain?
Last 5 minutes are us clambering it back, going, "No, we didn't mean it. We didn't. We misspoke. We misspoke."
To explain it, because we don't have time to do all the research, edit, and do the socials, do everything we do for the pod, and do an extra Patreon. The whole reason we never did a Patreon was because we didn't have the time. But we decided we will do one. There seems to be an appetite for us to do one, but we don't have time to edit it, so they'll be completely unedited. So we'll just record them as is and then go live. But because we thought
that was a bit of a selling point, to be honest, didn't we? In that you get the unfiltered versions of us, I guess.
Yeah, but because we'd record them after doing 2 episodes, so we were smashed by the end of it, and we got onto a hot topic that we probably should have stayed away from, but we made a faux pas during it. So yeah, it was really funny, but I still can't bring myself to listen to it.
It was a bold topic to bring up on the first ever Patreon one, and it's what you call in Welsh, you call it a punk llosg, right? Hot topic,
baby,
hot topic. So yeah, that'll be that little sizzle reel. So if you want to know what we were talking about, you're gonna have to pay the piper, baby.
And we're gonna do some cool things with people who go on different tiers. I can say this, can't I? We'll say if you go on one of the higher tiers, we'll do an episode on the Patreon or maybe the live feed. No, we'll do it on the Patreon, an episode dedicated to where you're from and history about your town. Or we'll do. We had a bunch of things for different.
We'll just
tiers.
tailor stuff. If you listen to the first episode, we had a bit more
a
grasp on things, didn't we? We did explain it a bit better there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we thought, why not? And it's like you said, we it's minimal effort for us in terms of editing because you get it unfiltered kind of thing. And also it's not as, shall we say, structured, is it? As our main ones. We don't plan and it's not necessarily all about Welsh history. It's a bit of this, it's a bit of that. It's not a fully formed thing yet, but we're kind of going to hopefully let you guys
and it's more
sort of drive us on that.
We'll always do the weekly free one, and there's no, we'll always do this, especially with people being broke at the moment. We don't expect any. It's a more, people at the moment give us money and they don't get anything back for it. So instead of doing that, we think we should probably do Patreon so people can.
That's what sort of tipped the scales, wasn't it? Because we weren't going to do it, and then because there's some very, very lovely people who donate to the pod and stuff, and they just get our thanks for that. So and that's worth fuck all. So
which is a
so
waste
we
of
give you
fucking pot
something
to
more
piss in.
bang for your buck. Yeah.
Yeah. So I reckon, mate, we crack. Oh, do you want to do a little? Yeah, sorry, I did interrupt. Do you want to read
Oh,
out the
sorry.
little?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this is
this
quite
was on.
cool.
Yeah. So my mate Chris sent me this. He sent me a link earlier this morning, and this was on a Reddit post, and it was some guy saying that a lot of the podcasts he listens to happen to be from Wales, or at least like sort of linked to Wales, and he was talking about like Mike Bubbins and Ellis James and all that sort of stuff. And then the top comment on there was from a guy called Keeping It Session,
Yeah,
and he
good
said,
lad.
I've been mostly listening to Tales for Wales podcast on Welsh history by two enthusiasts who like a drink. I've learnt more about Wales in the last year than I have for decades. Well worth a listen if you're still on the hunt for Welsh podcasts.
He's
So
going to
I
be creeped
obviously,
out now, isn't he?
oh yeah,
Keeping it session.
I'm
Like, what the
stalking you,
fuck?
buddy. Yeah, doxed
But
you.
yeah, we what an honor as well to be mentioned next to those absolute stalwarts. But coming across
Yeah.
them in the wild is an exciting element, isn't it, of getting comments?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and that's why I sent it to you soon. I was like, oh my god, like this is completely an organic mention for us. So
Yeah.
like not like the rest of the page shills that we have running around on Reddit. So so this was a big moment, and we thought we'd share it with the wider
Yeah, and it's a
pod
big thanks
audience.
because lots of people upvoted it, and people commented saying, "Oh, thanks, mate. I'll add that to my list." I think so that alone, that dude's shared us with other people so they can get involved in it, which is the best thing you could do. Is, just telling people about the pod is a huge help.
Bloody
for
beautiful,
us.
mate. Bloody beautiful.
Bloody beautiful, mate. It brings tear to the eye, doesn't it? Right. Anyway, I've got something to tell you. It's called history. Buckle in. You ready?
do a proper link. Do one
Oh
of your
yeah,
links.
yeah. So that there was a real big surprise. And talking of big things, we've got Owain Fawr, or if you literally translate it into English, Big Owain.
Big Owain, baby.
But this episode, as you'll tell from the title, is about Owain Gwynedd, or otherwise known as Owain Fawr. And when you see in history, in Welsh history, the word Fawr after the name, like Llywelyn Fawr, it just means the great. And it's like, because in literal English, literally it'd be like, yeah, big Owain, but big in terms of how important he was rather than stature.
Yeah. Welsh can
So
sometimes have like these a bit more of a nuanced meaning, can't it, than just the literal thing.
Yeah, because it's a very beautiful language.
It's a
spoken
fucking
by
very intelligent language, only for the upper echelons of brainy people.
Yeah, we snuck in through the back door.
Yeah, so I don't know how. I don't know what explains that, but there we go.
Well, that's why people in like posh Welsh speakers would fucking hate us, kind of troglodytes at the bottom, scuffing up all their language. Anyways, I'm mostly going to be sharing info I've read from the book by the great Gwynfor Evans, who was one of the most prominent Welsh politicians of the 20th century. He was like the president of Plaid Cymru, the National Party of Wales, and he was the party's first ever MP. And I think we went to school with his like grandson or something. We'll just leave that as that. But I was going to say we'll say his name, but he probably doesn't want his name read out.
No, probably not.
But yeah, so I think that must mean he's from roughly around our area, but he might not be. He might be West Wales. I don't know. I haven't researched it. Soon. But anyway, I read his book. It's called The Fight for Welsh Freedom, and it chronologizes the Welsh struggle for freedom all the way from the Romans through to the Normans, to the Middle Ages, up until modern history. Once again, back to back, I've read books. This is the second week in a row that I've read books. And of course, I've dipped into our trusted friend Wikipedia here and there, and with 3 other history websites. But
you got it.
Yeah, we have. I think for a while now we've been quite book orientated.
Bunch of bloody nerds, haven't we? Yeah. Reading fucking letters on bits of paper. It's ridiculous.
So the first thing I do is cover his early life. So Owain Gwynedd was a member of the House of Aberfraw, the senior branch of the dynasty of Rodri the Great, aka Rodri Fawr. So he's related somehow to the house that's related to Rodri Fawr. Well, loads of these people in history who were related to the big players are all from roughly the same family, because Gwynedd, a lot of these people come from Gwynedd. Gwynedd was kind of the strongest place in Wales in terms of consistency and rulers and stuff like that.
It was also a lot of thing back in the day as well, where like a lot of your oomph as a player in the bigger game would depend on your lineage as well, wouldn't it? So lots of people would say, even if it was bollocks, would be, like or
Yeah.
everyone apparently is like a descendant of Maxim Ledig or
Yeah.
Magnus
Yeah.
Maximus or something. It bodes well to say, oh yeah,
Yeah.
anyone big time, I was a fucking of his
Yeah.
bloodline kind of thing.
Especially because they didn't have ancestry.com back then. They had relied on druids
Exactly,
to back it up for 400 years later. Yeah, pretty sure you're related,
we'd
mate.
have been the stinking boys outside the pub covered in like pig shit going, I was a descendant of Maxim Ledig, I was. Pure blood I am.
Anyway, so his father was Griffith ap Cynan, who was a strong and long-lived ruler who made the Principality of Gwynedd the most influential in Wales during his 62 years of reign. 62-year reign, and he used the island of Anglesey, or in Welsh, Ynys Môn, his power base. His mother was Angharad ferch Owain, who was the daughter of Owain ab Edwin of Tygeinil. Sounds like anal. That's good. That's a little bit of the lineage. These people we might cover in future ones because they're of some importance. And Owain Fawr was the second son in this. His older son was called Cash. I'll get to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself.
So excited.
Yeah, Owain is thought to be born in Ynys Môn around 1100 or 1100, if that's whatever. You pick your choice, mate. Dealer's choice.
Yeah.
By about 1120, so when he's around 20 years old, his father had grown too old to lead his forces into battle, and Owain and his brothers Cadwallon and later Cadwaladr led the forces of Gwynedd against the Normans and against other Welsh princes with great success. So his brother Cadwallon was killed in battle against the forces of Powys in 1132, which left Owain as his kind of natural heir. And even though in Welsh custom it would be once the father dies, the land and ownership and stuff like that gets split between all sons who are bastards and not bastards. So usually that's the difference between England and Wales, where in England it would fall to the eldest son. That wasn't always the case in Wales, but
That's Cyfran, isn't it?
yeah,
Cyfran is the word.
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm bad for remembering the etymology and the right words for those kind of archaic like customs. But there is a word to differentiate between a sole heir and then lots of your children getting it. And that was always the case within Wales because you'd split it quite equally. There was loads of infighting, so brothers would turn on each other because they want more land. Whereas in England, it'd been custom that the oldest son would always get it, and that was just more the norm. So there was less kind of the other brothers wouldn't have a big enough army to challenge the oldest son because they wouldn't have the whole thing.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because I always thought like, oh, that's a much fairer way of
Yeah.
divvying it out. You'd be thinking, oh, well, I get my share, don't worry about it. But that actually leads to loads more infighting and sort of like fratricide and all that sort of stuff because you think, well, if I kill my brother, I get fucking double the share.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you couldn't do that in England because your brother didn't have any share to raise like an army. Anyway, this then, I'll explain why he became the heir in a second. But so that was Cadwallon. It's quite difficult, especially in this episode. There's so many people with similar names. So Cadwallon was the older brother, and Cadwaladr was either his age or a little bit younger, because it looks like they're born in the same year. So Owain and Cadwaladr, now his older brother Cadwallon was dead. Owain and Cadwaladr, in alliance with Griffith ap Rhys of Deheubarth, won a major victory over the Normans at Krieg Mawr near Cardigan in 1136, and they annexed Ceredigion into their father's realm. So Ceredigion kind of came up to Gwynedd. And was under control of Gwynedd. And we have a whole episode on Krieg Mawr, and if we were smart enough, we could have done these in order, because we did Krieg Mawr, then we did an episode on Gwenllian, who was married to that Griffith ap Rhys of Deheubarth I just mentioned, where really we should have done Gwenllian episode first, then chronologically it goes Gwenllian and her husband Griffith ap Rhys, they fight for Wales for 20 years, and then there's the Battle of Krieg Mawr, and then there's this continued rise of Owain Fawr. However, next time we talk about this era, I'm going to cover Gwenllian's son, Rhys ap Griffith, who went on to be an incredible figure in Welsh history, and he was known as Lord Rhys, and he ended up taking. You'll know him if you know this era. He ended up taking back even more lands from the Normans and surpassed his mother and father's control. Also, whilst researching this, I made my very first edit to a Wikipedia article, because this is a confusing episode with everyone has the name of their father, because we mentioned before in Welsh you're named, if Jack was my dad, I'd be called so it'd be like Frank's ap Jack. It means ap, the word the ap there is like son of, so everyone here is called like Rhys ap Griffith, and then when they have a kid they call it Griffith ap Rhys, so they name it after their granddad, but then they're also named after them. Someone said it was Rhys ap Griffiths who fought with Owain Fawr at the Battle of Kriegmawr, but it was actually his father, Griffiths ap Rhys. Confusing, like I know, but Rhys would have been 5
Yeah,
at the time of that battle, so I did my very first Wikipedia article that got accepted.
mate. That's what happens when you start reading the books, mate. You
Yeah,
start fucking
exactly.
editing the Wikipedia articles then.
But that's the other thing. People who are reading this online themselves would get so confused because you've like, hang on, a second ago this said this guy was only 5 years old. But
Yeah, it's confusing enough when it's
when
yeah, when you when
properly
all the names are correct.
yeah,
You know, let
yeah,
alone if
yeah.
they get a name fucking wrong.
So anyway, at the Battle of Kriegmawr, Owain's father, Griffith ap Cynan, who we mentioned in the Gwynedd episode, and he was king of Gwynedd, he was too old for this, so he sent Owain and his brother to do this big battle. As we talked about in the Kriegmawr episode, the Welsh, as we talked about in the Kriegmawr episode, the Welsh won this heroic victory, absolutely sending the Normans packing. They like get drowned, and it's really gruesome. And it's the first big use of the Welsh longbow. It's a fun episode. I'd really recommend going to give it a listen if you haven't already. Then, when Owain's dad died, he inherited a portion of Gwynedd, which under his dad's long 60-year rule had become well established and was really prosperous. However, he had to share it with his brother Cadwaladr, literally what we said a minute ago, where we said, the land and wealth gets shared between the sons. But then in 1143, Cadwaladr was implicit or implicated in the murder of Anaroid ap Griffith, who was the prince of Deheubarth and the son of Griffith ap Rhys in his first marriage before he met Gwenllian. So that man we mentioned a second ago, who was at the Battle of Kriegmawr as an ally, Cadwaladr had been implicated in the murder of his son. So this was a real betrayal, as Anaroid and his family from Deheubarth had both been key players in supporting Gwynedd and fighting back against the Normans. But he's also due to marry Owain's daughter to further strengthen Owain's power. So Owain responded by sending his son, Hywel ap Owain Gwynedd, to strip him of his lands in the north of Ceredigion. This led to Cadwaladr fleeing, and he went over to Ireland, where he hired a fleet from Otter, the Norse Gael king of Dublin, and landed in Abermannai in 1144 in an attempt to force Owain to return his lands. So yeah, he's gone over to Ireland, the naughty brother, and he's picked up Otter, the Norse Gael king, and he's like, right, I'm going to come back here and claim back this land. But
that's a hell of a title, that as well. It sounds cool as fuck. The Norse Gael king.
Yeah, it is quite good, isn't it?
Very cool.
But they don't have a huge amount of history about or acknowledgement about what happened. But from what there is available, Cadwaladr apparently abandoned or escaped from his allies and made peace with his brother, who then obliged the Dubliners to leave. So something happened, and he decided not to go to war with his brother, either due to his brother's army being much better, a bit more well established. They're fighting on their own home turf. He might have thought the odds were too far against him, or he thought, that's my brother.
Oh, look, it's gone far enough, and shall I just send the Dublin boys home? It's like clearly going to stomp me, so I might as well send them back.
So he decided, So Owain sort of reconciled with his brother, but from 1144, Owain pretty much ruled over all of North Wales. And then, 10 years later, Cadwaladr was driven into exile again, so he must have fucked up again, but I'll cover that in a little bit later. But for a long time now, Owain had been well established as the sole ruler of Gwynedd. Like I said, Cadwaladr does come back into the fold, but I'll leave him there for now and just go back to Owain Fawr. That's the early part of Owain's life, where he's climbed the ladder and got his lands in Gwynedd expanded and become the sole ruler.
How old is he at this point? In the story, so he's in his mid-20s, 30s.
So he'd be, if he was born in 11, it'd be between 30s and 40s by now.
Okay, right.
Let me just give you the exact date. So he'd be 35 actually. The part I'm going to talk about now, he's 35, because. So that's the early part. He's now got to a point where he's 35. He's well established. He's got his own lands under control. And he's deciding to kind of expand on his current lot. And over in merry old England, there was something happening called the Anarchy. And the term the Anarchy was given to define a time in England and Normandy when things were going fucking batshit doolally. And it was after the ruthless but stable and established King Henry I died in 1135. Henry's heir was his daughter Matilda, but many English barons refused to support her and instead backed her cousin Stephen. So this fight for the crown of England between Stephen and Matilda, who's confusingly sometimes called Maud, raged for 19 years. Maud.
Maud. Maud, I'm bored.
So
Jesus.
what I
Yeah.
do quite like is she's not called Princess, she's called Empress Matilda, which was her official title. Her most
Ah,
powerful supporter was her half brother Robert of Gloucester, a martial lord, which, as we know, is the place down on the border of England and Wales where the Normans were given high positions of power, and they ruled
yeah.
over the natives with an iron fist. The native Welsh, that is. The martial lords took full control. So the martial lords took full advantage of the turmoil of the anarchy to bolster their own strength and further their independence from the English crown. But during this time, the Welsh also took advantage of this turmoil and began casting sweeping gains of lands all across Wales that had been lost to the Normans in the last couple of decades. Um,
It sounds like anarchy. It sounds very tumultuous.
Yeah, well, the Battle of Creek Mile was a good example of that very early on, in one of the earlier stages, because but that was just one of many great important victories that happened all across Wales against this really all powerful Norman army who conquered England in 1066. They were
Mm.
one of the most powerful nations in the world, and they'd done so much damage to Wales, but they never fully controlled it. Um, and during this time of anarchy in Normandy in England, that power that stretched to the regions of Gwynedd and to Deheubarth was now getting pushed all the way back into England.
I sense an opportunity. Is that what they were
Yeah,
thinking?
well,
Yeah.
Owain sensed that opportunity as well, and as one of the strongest, if not the strongest figure in this Welsh resurgence, with the help of Gwenllian's son, Rhys ap Griffiths, who I'll cover another time, Owain and his men pushed the Normans out of much of Deheubarth and Dyfed. And then in 1146, as this turmoil was continuing, they captured Mole Castle. Then in 1150, they captured Rhuddlan, and then they started to push down as far as the borders of Powys. Now, it's always really important to remember that Wales was rarely united. Like, it wasn't united by a
Mm.
motive or by a leader. But under Norman rule, for the first time in a long time, they were really ready to fight together to get these bastards out. But again, it's important to remember Wales isn't one country, it's rather a series of kingdoms with their leaders or
Yeah.
princes or kings or whatever you want to call them. They'd often be quite cynical and ready to like do each other over to get a bit more land, or if they felt like one neighbor was getting too strong, they'd often preempt an attack and would sometimes plot against these powerful leaders like Owain with the English or the Normans. And one example of this is because Owain was getting so close to Powys, the Prince of Powys, Madog ap Meredydd, called for assistance from Ranulph de Gurnon, the fourth Earl of Chester, which led to this massive bloody battle at Coles Hill. But again, Owain was victorious, so he was pretty unstoppable at this period, even fighting against the Welsh combined with the English
His own
slash
boys, like
Normans.
yeah. It's so frustrating, in it. You always hear about it. It's tale as old as time when it comes to Wales, specifically in the medieval period. Too busy just fucking dicking each other over
Yeah.
to get any sort of, like you said, if at any point that the Wales just united together,
Mm.
we could get stuff done. But
And
it's just like you
this is
said,
an
it's too
example.
busy fucking bickering with each other.
This is one of the examples where coming together did work against the Normans. You'd have
Mm.
people in South Wales fighting, you have people in Gwent having uprisings, people in Deheubarth, people in Gwynedd, and they came together and really did push the Normans far back. And by 1153, he and Rhys ap Griffiths, they added Ceredigion to their reconquest. So things were going really, really well for Owain up in this point
Mm.
until we hit 1154 when Henry II properly arrived. Henry II created a much stabler England, and he was reminiscent of Henry I. And he was looking to take back the land Wales had reclaimed. So, when Henry invaded Gwynedd in 1157 with the support of Madog ap Meredydd of Powys, who's that person I just mentioned who lost a battle to Owain,
Turncoat, yeah.
yeah, um, and I think it was actually Owain's brother Cadwaladr who'd beaten Madog ap Meredydd originally. So like he was still around to come back and help in these battles. So that even though he was a bit of a
Mm.
turncoat and a ratbag, he'd helped Owain's army
He did muck
in some
in
important
when it
battles.
counted, yeah.
But this big invasion that Henry started didn't go to plan. His army was almost constantly dogged by these guerrilla tactics used by Owain and his men, which over time drastically reduced the English force and their morale. So it's something we always talk about with like Welsh tactics. It's just fucking constantly on the move, never in one place long. You can't have a pitched battle against them, and they're always
Mm.
just going to be at night. You can't sleep. You're getting attacked. Parts of they'll either attack your supply lines, or they'll attack the head or the rear or the middle, and then they're gone.
I
It's
think we covered this a little bit. I correct me if I'm wrong. Did we? I don't know if we released this episode because the audio might not have been good enough. But we covered this a battle called the Battle of Cadvan, which is like essentially takes place. It's like over 2 days in a forest,
yeah,
and that really illustrates like sort of the damage to morale and your just will to live, I guess, that you would have with these guerrilla tactics, because you're just constantly on edge. You can't sleep because you never know when the next attack is coming because it's so random. And you could just be nodding off, going, "Oh, should we call it a night?" And then some fucking javelins would come like ripping through your camp and things like that. It
yeah,
just yeah, it's like I said, that I think that damage to the morale can't be like understated, can it? Because even
yeah,
if you add thousands and thousands of men, if you got a couple of thousand men that just cannot fucking walk because they're dead on their feet because they get
yeah.
kept up all night,
and it would,
it's just
and
yeah,
the
it's
Welsh would
ridiculous.
only need a couple of hundred or even less than that. It could be 50 men to cause that damage, because
Mm.
they wouldn't know where the Welsh were. And I said this last week, Wales was covered in thick ancient forest before it got cut down. And so much so you could have these big English armies coming through, and then you could have 50 Welshmen who knew the area really well, could just come in and cause damage and just constantly hassle. It was the same similar what William Wallace did in Scotland towards the end of his time, where he had fewer men. He would just constantly plague the English around the country and then run away really quickly. Um, so anyway, after this, so yeah, you mentioned that Battle of Cadvan. That was like 100 years later. So Wales has
Mm.
always done this tactic. But like I said, this invasion didn't go to plan, and after tirelessly marching around Wales, Henry finally found Owain's army when they met Ewlo. I think it's Ewlo, Ewloe, Ewlo. Owain's army made camp to block the route to Tuthill at Rhuddlan. Um, Henry split his main army with a smaller force that had marched to the nearby oh God, I wish I could say it, but I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone from North Wales or that area. Ewlo, Ewlol, Ewlol.
Just do what
Anyway,
feels right, mate. There's no
yeah,
malice in it.
yeah. Through the nearby Ewlol woods in modern day Flintshire to outflank Owen's army. So, I'll say that again in case it wasn't very clear. Henry split his main army into a smaller force and the main bulk of the army, and then he led a smaller force through this woods to outflank the army. But ever the clever tactician, Owain foresaw this and sent a large army led by his sons David ap Owain Gwynedd and Cynan ap Owain Gwynedd into the woods to guard Owain's main force from Henry's outflanking army. Owain then also decided to personally lead an extra 200 men through the same woods to reinforce his sons. So then, when Henry's outflanking force advanced into the woods, they were completely ambushed by Owen's forces, and nearly all of them were slaughtered, including the formidable Constable of Chester, Eustace Fitzjohn, and some little wimp called Henry of Essex, who deserted the field, leaving the king for dead. Henry himself only narrowly avoided being killed, which he was rescued by Roger, Earl of Hertford. Um, so this was a
So he
really
had a
like the
bunch of bloody poussoirs on his team.
yeah, and this could have drastically changed the whole course of English history had he not survived. So Henry managed to escape back to the main army alive. But then Owain had done this damage already. He didn't want to lose a whole army in this big open battle instead, so he decided to reposition himself at St. Asaph. But in doing so, this meant Henry could enter Rhuddlan, when he was in Rhuddlan, I'll go into that in a second, actually, because he causes like untold misery there, and he just like there's no army to defend the place, so he starts to burn the shit down. Uh,
Ugh.
but when he was there, he was one point of Henry reaching Rhuddlan was he was meant to meet his naval expedition there. He'd orchestrated it so he'd have his army on the mainland and then his navy arrive. But instead of meeting Henry there, the leader of his ships, Henry Fitzroy, they got waylaid and they decided to plunder Ynys Môn. And they were trying to get their own riches in before they met up with the king. But in doing
Greedy
so, they'd been
buggers.
ambushed. Yeah, they got too greedy, and when they landed at Ynys Môn to plunder, they got ambushed by a army of local Welsh soldiers, and all of the English were defeated, and nearly all of them killed, including their leader Henry Fitzroy. Um,
Oof. Bad
so
choice, boys. Bad choice. Stay off the
Henry
fucking Ynys Môn.
yeah. But so things had gone really wrong for it. His whole navy had been killed. He'd lost a load of men throughout the campaign. Um, which really irked him and led him to viciously ransack eastern Gwynedd and destroy like loads of churches, loads of local population were massacred, loads of the villages burnt down, and it really shocked and disgusted so many that the holy places had been butchered by the hands of an English king. That was something that was reminiscent of like the Viking behaviour rather than like a
Mm.
God-fearing king. He burnt down and killed loads of Welsh churches and Welsh priests.
Was this
Um,
like at the time where this like this sort of notion of chivalry was in
mhm.
place as well? Like
Yeah,
so, because the Normans were big on that, weren't they? Like they
yeah,
had they used to consider themselves a sort of bit better than
yeah,
not
exactly.
well. They
Than
they
the
might say
brutish
Welsh
Welsh.
savages, yeah, brutish
Yeah.
Welsh, because we didn't have the same kind of these notions of chivalric
No,
duty
yeah,
and
there
like
weren't rules
these
of war.
oaths, you know? Yeah,
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 yeah. But
exactly.
he I think it kind of testament to how angry he was that he'd failed. Um, but he stayed in Wales longer than he was intending to, and he wasn't leaving. And he was killing so much of Owain's people of Owain's lands. It forced Owain to come to terms with Henry, and he surrendered Rhuddlan and other conquests in the east, and had to give up the lands and hand it over. And I always think it's so mad that when you do these come to terms, you think you just kill the opposition leader because you just think, well,
Yeah,
but I think either because you couldn't rule there, it's better to have a pacified king than a dead king, and then loads of chances for somebody else to
and
rise up.
rebellion there
Yeah,
constantly. Yeah.
but I think it's really worth remembering the size differences in Welsh kingdoms versus the English/Norman
Mm.
forces and resources. And although Owain had won a lot of battles and taken out a load of English troops, they were still always outnumbered and always outarmed, and they were lacking in the resources to defend against such a force. To give like help you picture it, by the time of Owain Glyndŵr, Wales had a population a 15th the size smaller than that of England. So easy way of saying it,
Jesus.
England had a population 15th sizes bigger than Wales.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been too dissimilar throughout these periods. There were ebbs and flows depending on trade, building up towns, and plagues wiping them out again. But it was roughly always around that size. So there was, I think, when Owain was around, Owain Glyndŵr, that is, there was around 300,000 people in Wales, and in England it was 15 times bigger than that. It's no matter it's impossible to contend with those resources. So even though Henry had lost so much along the way, lost more than the Welsh had, he could still just replenish. So it led to Owain having to come to these terms. 40 years after these events, the scholar Gerald of Wales, in a rare quote for these specific times, wrote that Owain Gwynedd said to his troops on the eve of battle, "For we ought to rejoice at the conduct of our adversary, for, unless supported by divine assistance, we are far inferior to the English, and they, by their behaviour, have made God their enemy, who is able most powerfully to
Ooh.
avenge both himself and us. We therefore must devoutly promise God that we will henceforth pay greater reverence than ever to churches and holy places." So he said this after these churches were all ransacked and killed,
Yeah.
which is essentially him saying, like, we can't beat these guys, but God can. And if we respect and honour him, unlike what the English have done, then we haven't lost, for the glory of heaven still awaits us. It's a good way of saying, lads, we got no fucking chance
Yeah.
here.
We,
God's got it
and
sorted for
also,
us.
but it's like yeah, the moral is on our side, sort of thing. That the side of God is ours, kind of thing, because they're the
Yeah,
ones conducting themselves in the what's the word? The word of God, if you like.
yeah, yeah. And they got God on their side, so they feel like, hey, we're suffering now, but in heaven we'll be rewarded for not being so
Mm.
awful. But then as time went on, when it got to 1160, Madog ap Meredydd, the guy from Powys, he died, which enabled Owain to regain territory in the east. And then in 1163, he formed one of the most powerful alliances we've ever had in Wales, which was Rhys ap Deheubarth, Rhys ap Griffith Deheubarth, who I've mentioned throughout this episode. He is Lord Rhys, the son of Gwenllian. Um, and together they joined forces once again to challenge English rule. So that led King Henry again to invade Gwynedd in 1165, but instead of taking the usual route along the northern coastal plain, the king's army invaded from Oswestry and took a route over the Bedouin Hills. But now he was met with one unified army of all Welsh princes, with Owain as the undisputed leader. So finally, Wales has come together to show
Come on,
resistance.
lads.
But the one time they do, there wasn't really a giant battle. There were relatively small battles, like the Battle of Croydon, which we don't really know what happened there. People don't even know if there was a battle there, but there wasn't. There was lots of these small skirmishes.
Mm.
However, what really came to Wales's defence was the Welsh weather. It was torrential rain, and it forced Henry's army to retreat in disorder. So it was just it was unpassable. We mentioned before that they were so much better armored, and they'd have like all their gear and
Yeah.
stuff. But because the ground's marshy, their horses are too heavy, and they're too heavy. Um, so once again, this infuriated Henry, and he ended up mutilating a number of Welsh hostages, including two of Owain's
Jesus.
sons, and he removed both their eyes. Well, he removed their eyes from both his sons. Um,
Sounds
so
like a guy with his head screwed on and with absolutely no sort of mental illness going on at all.
yeah. It's also worth pointing out that the terms of the peace agreement between Henry and Owain in the last campaign, Henry included the stipulation that Cadwaladr, Owain's pesky brother, should be given his lands back. But that backfired because this time Cadwaladr was more careful to cooperate closely with his brother, and that helped him to recapture Rhuddlan and Prestatyn castles in 1167. Um, Now, up in this time, we've seen like Welsh kingdoms, like kings of Gwynedd and kings of Deheubarth, but rarely in history there's been people to call themselves kings of Wales. We have princes because they're in charge of principalities within Wales, like Prince of Powys and things like that. But we have a record of Owain writing two letters to Louis VII of France, a country the Welsh often were allies with. In which he describes himself as King of Wales or King of the Welsh. So he now regarded
Mm,
himself as King of Wales. In the last of his letters to Louis of France, he offered him to become a vassal for the French king, which means your country acts on behalf of another country in attacks and stuff. So to be a vassal, you do you know how to explain
yeah.
that better?
Yeah. It's not the first time that sort of happened with Wales, is it? Because we were always a thorn in England's side, and
Yeah,
England was, quite consistently at war with France as well. It often sort of benefited a French king or leader to have us cause trouble at home
yeah,
while they caused it abroad, kind of thing, didn't they? So yeah,
and
it's
we'd
sort
be
of like
reinforced and given money and stuff like that,
yeah, you get
resourced.
bankrolled, you get
Yeah,
some men and all that sort of stuff. Loads of people have done it, like Owain Fawr, he tried
yeah.
it, didn't he? They
Owain
sent him with I think Owain Glyndŵr,
Owain
he had
Glyndŵr
some
did. Yeah, he got.
French backup, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he had 7,000 troops, which is a really,
Mm,
or maybe even more. But I think we'll cover that in a because I read about that recently. That he got, yeah, he met a bunch of French soldiers at Fishguard. But yeah, in this last letter he sent to Louis of France, this time he styled himself as Walharion Princeps, which was Prince of Wales. And but this again was the first time anyone had used that title. So he opted again not to be King of Wales, even though he had called himself that previously. He's opted to call himself Prince of Wales, which is the first time we've seen Prince of all of Wales put it down.
mm.
Um,
We've covered that before. In that, like, Prince, I know in the English language you think Prince is below
yeah, you
king,
think it's
but
son of a
In
king.
Welsh it's Tywysog, is it has a bit more meaning.
Yeah, so it doesn't just mean like son of a prince. It the word Tywysog it
Son of the
derives from
king,
the
you mean?
Welsh
Yeah.
Tywys. Sorry, yeah. So yeah, like you said, people often think prince means it's a lesser title, meaning it's not the king. But in Welsh, Tywysog it derives from the Welsh word Tywys, which means to lead. So the literal meaning of Tywysog means the one who leads, which is slightly different to what you think when we say prince, doesn't it? You think
Yeah,
prince, you mean
I think it can often be misconstrued, can't it? When you
yeah,
think, "Oh, prince," it's like a lesser title, but
yeah,
that's only like the literal translation into English. In Welsh, it means
yeah.
like a lot more.
And England was a kingdom. Wales has had principalities within those kingdoms, so you would be a
Mm.
prince of that principality rather than a king of a kingdom. Is it? But it is quite confusing, and sometimes people would choose not to call themselves king because they didn't want to piss off the English. So, like, sometimes you would be less likely to be attacked if you were regarded as a prince than you were as a king of a region. That's
Yeah,
sometimes what
I think that
happened.
was we covered that on some other episodes, and it was
Yeah,
smarter in Wales to call yourself a prince because it wouldn't
yeah,
piss off the kings in
yeah,
England, even though in
um,
Wales it meant sort of equivalent,
yeah.
the same thing.
So yeah, Henry didn't invade Gwynedd again, and Owen was able to regain his eastern conquest, recapturing Rhuddlan Castle in 1167 after a siege of 3 months. Next episode we do around this era, like I said, we'll do Rhys ap Griffiths because he takes the torch on from this period now. So and he carries on to fight against Henry II and the English, and is another great Welsh hero. Uh, and he's something really important, I think we'll cover, because often you get the Owain Glyndŵrs, you get the Llywelyn Fawr,
Mm.
Llywelyn Ein Olaf, but Owain and Rhys are two princes who are like really important to Welsh resistance and Welsh history. So, fair.
And they cover the thing that we started this whole thing for, and the Welsh history that you never hear of. So it's perfect.
Exactly. Diolch yn gwrando. Thanks for listening. We'll keep you posted on what we're going to do next for the Patreon stuff. But tell your mates, leave us reviews, and yeah, love you. Goodbye forever.
Ta-da, 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 ta-da.